Hi there, it's Megan with the Pamphleteer, and today I'm joined with Representative Jody Barrett. He represents the 69th District. Let's invite him on here for a second. Hi
That's
there, how are
it.
you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
So we wanted to get on here real quick and ask you about this letter that you just sent to the governor, basically asking him to deeply consider this choice to call special session specifically about public safety following what happened with Covenant. So do you want to give us a little bit of information about what it is, why you decided to send this letter out there now?
Sure. Well, of course, I think you're aware that there have been several letters already put out there. Chairman Faison put something out there about the investigation with the Covenant shooting and the need to get that information in our hands before we are really asked to fully consider what it is that's the right plan of action going forward. And then my friend Brian Ritchie also sent a letter out asking the governor to reconsider and abandon this plan to have a special session. Um, the main reason for me writing my letter and sending it is to speak on behalf of the people in my district. Since I've been home from session in Nashville, I've been making the rounds, going and doing legislative reviews, talking to all three of my county GOP bodies as well as other groups throughout the counties, and almost unanimously across the board, the feedback has been negative when it comes up about this special session, and particularly with any effort to do a red flag law. So, whether it's emails or phone calls or running into people in the grocery store or talking to them in church or going to these political meetings where people are actually engaged and paying attention, the feedback in my district anyway is vastly different than I think the information that the governor is getting where he is. And so I just felt it was necessary for me to let him know that there's a broader conversation that needs to be had across the state. And I don't think that can happen appropriately in a 3 or 4 day special session.
Sure. Well, and as I was looking through some of the points that you made in your letter, I wanted to go into this notion of public safety, because that is what this is supposedly about. Of course, you can clearly recall how you felt after General Assembly, how tensions were so high and how dangerous it was, even just going in and out and just in your regular lives surrounding the General Assembly and all that contention. So how do you feel about the public safety of going into this special session when we know there will be more protests going forward?
I think I put something in the letter about it being ironic that we would have a special session called for the purpose of dealing with public safety that was probably going to put public safety at risk. We saw a rapid and, I've got to give him credit, successful astroturfing campaign that happened almost immediately after the shooting. And literally the shooting happened on Monday, and on Thursday, all Hades broke out in the Capitol. And I can only imagine what that's going to be like 3 months, 4 months down the road when these same folks have the ability to plan accordingly, recruit, coordinate, the whole 9 yards. And the biggest issue here is when you start talking about legislation that involves gun rights or the Second Amendment, sure, you're going to have folks on the left who are in favor of gun control or gun grabbing, whatever it is that they're trying to do. But it's also going to attract that same passion on the opposite end of the political spectrum. And there will be folks there to advocate for and fight for their gun rights and their Second Amendment rights. And that's just a recipe for disaster. We're going to give all of these people, not only here in Nashville, Middle Tennessee, but we're putting the call out across the entire country. Hey, America, if you feel strongly about this, come to Nashville on this date in this week, and let's all raise Cain together in downtown Nashville. And that's just, in my opinion, not a very wise thing for us to be doing.
Right. And moving into the whole sphere of talking about how this has been used as a political cudgel, I also would like to touch on part of your letter where you specifically call that out, how quickly certain sides of the aisle have jumped on such a tragedy. Do you want to put that a little bit more into your own words?
Sure. Well, I've pointed out I've not been shy to point out on Twitter that many of the folks that are being famous or being trying to be made famous as a result of this didn't file a single gun bill back in January when they had a chance. You know, we have a January 30th bill filing deadline, and at least two of the three protesters that the two gentlemen that were expelled, neither one of them filed a gun bill to address this issue. It was not important enough to them to make it one of their 15 bills that they filed. So that it's disingenuous for them to stand up and raise the ruckus that they've raised, saying that this is the most important thing in the world to them, because it clearly wasn't until it became something that attracted attention from the national spotlight. And so, again, I give them credit. They seized on the moment, and they've done a very good job of promoting themselves personally and padding their bank accounts. But they're not trying to truly address safety for children in this state. Look, and I don't mind saying I don't think that they really care about what happened at Covenant. I think all they care about is continuing to get their name and their face on the media, in the news, to get coverage and make this as messy a process as they can possibly make it.
Sure, and we've seen that echoed with some of the notions put out there, even when Representative Brian Ritchie was getting interviewed about why he voted yes to expel Jones, and he basically said, "I voted yes because he asked me to, because he knew that he would get more attention from being expelled." So it's certainly, and it's not really it's not a hidden agenda as much as people think it is. So
Sure.
in closing, I also wanted to just ask, how do you look at approaching this? What would be your suggestion going forward, as far as if we don't call session, what do you think will happen? Or how would you like this to play out, as you have called upon the governor to look into it and consider it more deeply?
Well, personally, I don't think that we should consider anything as controversial and really fundamentally altering as a gun legislation or a Second Amendment limitation without going through the full legislative process of from January to May, and having things being presented and out there for people to come and testify, where bills take weeks in order to get to the floor instead of just a matter of hours. And that's the biggest issue with a special session. I think, part of what we're seeing with this third grade retention rollout is that was passed in a 3 or 4 day special session. There wasn't enough time for everybody that had a stake in that to come forward, see what it was that we were considering, and then having their say as to whether or not it could be made better or should even be passed at all. And I fear that same thing might happen when we get into this discussion in a special session about red flag legislation, where rules are suspended, debate is limited, things go from being presented to the committee to being on the House floor within a matter of hours or days, as opposed to weeks or months. And so I just think it would be wise for us to take a breath, slow down, and let's seriously consider the long-term ramifications of making a dramatic change to the law in Tennessee as it relates to the Second Amendment. And and it's not just the Second Amendment. It's not just the guns. I mean, there's a whole host of issues that go into what caused this person to commit this crime, but also all gun crimes and violence across the state. I mean, we've got something just as simple as teenagers walking up to senior adults on the sidewalk and hitting them upside the head. That's a fundamental societal issue that's a cultural problem that we have to address. That's not a gun issue, but it's part of a larger problem that we need to have serious conversations about, and it needs to have those conversations need to take place with as many voices as possible.
All right. Thank you so much for coming. And if you are a constituent of Representative Barrett's, I'm sure he would be happy for you to reach out to him and let him know what you think about this. Of course, the governor has had an open survey on his website. So if you'd like to give any of your personal insights as a constituent out there, guys, you can find the links there, and we will link it below after this segment. But thank you so much for joining us. I know you're about to leave the country for, I hope, a little bit of R&R, and we're looking forward to seeing how things transpire as we go into whatever's going to happen in August.
Well, we'll be there and ready to work regardless. If he calls us, I'm ready to do my job.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to end the recording.